make mistakes. We've all said things we wish we hadn't, done things we wish we could undo. And yet, if you look back honestly, you'll see that at that time, with the understanding and consciousness you had, you were doing your best. It's a curious thing, isn't it? We stand in the present, armed with new awareness, and we look back at the person we once were, as though they should have known what we know now. But that earlier self could not have. It was moving through life with the tools available at that moment, with the clarity or lack of clarity it had at the time. To condemn yourself for the past is like scolding a child for not knowing calculus. You learn through fumbling, through error, through falling down. That is how the game works. Every mistake was part of the path that brought you here. So forgiveness begins not with grand gestures, but with this simple recognition. You were always doing your best, even when your best looked clumsy or confused. To see that is to soften. To soften is to begin to forgive. To forgive yourself is not to erase the past, nor to pretend it didn't happen. It is to see it for what it truly was, an experiment in being alive. Every choice, every blunder, every harsh word you regret was not a crime against existence, but a step in learning how to walk. The trouble is, most of us carry our mistakes like stones in a sack, dragging them along year after year. We replay scenes in our heads, wishing we could edit the script, but the past is finished. Now it is only an illusion carried by the mind. To keep punishing yourself is to argue with what no longer is. There is a difference between learning and self-condemnation. Learning is alive. It opens the way forward. Condemnation is dead weight. It chains you to an old version of yourself that doesn't even exist anymore. Compassion for yourself is to let the stones fall, to lay down the heavy sack, and to see that you are no longer the one who stumbled. You are the one who learned from them. And in seeing this, you take your first step into freedom. What is true of yourself is also true of others. When a person acts in a way you call wrong, they are not choosing from infinite possibilities with perfect clarity. They are acting from the limits of their awareness, from the conditions that shape them. If someone speaks in bitterness, it is because bitterness has taken root in their heart. They learned it from the soil of their upbringing, from wounds you may never see. And so, to condemn them outright is to forget that they are already living inside their own punishment. A person who lashes out is not free. They are driven by pain, by fear, by confusion. To meet them with more judgment is to add weight to what is already unbearable. This does not mean you must accept every cruelty or excuse every harm. It means you begin to see the human being beneath the behavior, the child beneath the anger, the suffering beneath the mask. And when you see this, even if you must walk away, you do not carry hatred in your heart. That is the beginning of forgiving the world. It is easy to judge. Judgment is quick, effortless, and it makes us feel superior for a moment. That is why most people do it. It costs nothing. But to understand another human being, to actually imagine their inner world, that is difficult. It requires us to pause, to think, to feel. And this is where the highest kind of intelligence comes in. Not the intelligence of solving puzzles or memorizing facts, but the intelligence of empathy, to see yourself in another and another in yourself, to recognize that their anger is your anger in another form. Their confusion is the same confusion you once carried. Their blindness, the same blindness you once struggled through. It is the deepest strength. For anyone can strike back, anyone can condemn. But to look into the eyes of another and see the suffering that drives their actions, that is a rare and subtle wisdom. When you understand in this way, forgiveness ceases to be a moral duty. It becomes a natural response. You see, there was never anything to forgive in the first place, only pain to be understood. There is a saying, hurt people hurt people. Pain has a way of reproducing itself, passing from one to another like a contagion. Someone wounded in childhood may grow up to wound their own children. A bitter word spoken to you may be repeated unconsciously to someone else, and so the chain continues, generation after generation. If we do not awaken, if we do not forgive, we simply pass the poison along. We become the very thing we once suffered from, and in this way, the world remains locked in a cycle of resentment and retaliation. Forgiveness is the refusal to play that game. It is the decision not to pass along what was handed to you in anger. It is saying, this stops here. Not because the other person deserves it, but because you no longer wish to carry the burden forward. In that moment, forgiveness is not about them at all. It is about you. It is how you reclaim your freedom from the endless repetition of hurt. You become the break in the chain, the point at which pain no longer multiplied. Forgiveness, you see, is not always about embracing someone or inviting them back into your life. Often it happens silently, in the privacy of your own heart. You may forgive a person and still choose not to walk beside them again, and that is perfectly so. Forgiveness does not require forgetting, nor does it demand foolishness. What it asks of you is simple, that you no longer carry the fire of resentment. For resentment burns only the one who holds it. You may think you are punishing another by keeping hatred alive, but in truth, it is your own mind that smoulders, your own spirit that is consumed. So forgiveness is not weakness nor indulgence. It is clarity. It is the ability to see that to hold on is to chain yourself to the very thing you long to be free of. By letting go, you release not only the other, but yourself. And strangely enough, once you no longer demand that they change, sometimes people do. But even if they never change, you are no longer bound to their story. That is the quiet power of forgiveness in practice. Most people confuse intelligence with cleverness. To be clever is to calculate, to manipulate symbols, to win arguments. But the highest form of intelligence is not found in the head alone. It is in the heart that can imagine another's life as if it were its own. Empathy is the art of slipping into another's skin, of tasting their experience from within. And this requires a subtle kind of awareness, one that goes beyond logic. For logic alone will always judge right or wrong, guilty or innocent. But empathy asks, what pain gave rise to this action? What blindness shaped this choice? This is not indulgence. It is not excusing cruelty. It is simply seeing reality in its depth. For no one wakes up and decides to be bitter, to be cruel, to be lost. They arrive there through causes, through a web of influences stretching back further than even they can trace. To grasp this is intelligence. It is difficult because it dissolves the easy satisfaction of judgment. But it is liberating because once you see the chain of causes, you can no longer hate the link. You can only understand. At the deepest level, forgiveness is not even a moral act. It is a recognition of unity. When you see clearly, you begin to understand that the one who harms you is not truly separate from you. Their suffering is your suffering in another form. Their blindness, another mask of the same life that looks through your own eyes. To hate them, then, is to hate a part of yourself. It is as if the hand were to scold the finger for fumbling, forgetting that they belong to the same body. The finger's clumsiness is the hand's clumsiness, and in the same way, the bitterness of another is not apart from life. It is life struggling with itself. This is why the great teachers always spoke of forgiveness, not because it is noble, but because it is natural. Once you see that there is no separate other to forgive, there is only life stumbling and learning, just as you stumble and learn. In this vision, compassion ceases to be an effort. It flows as naturally as breathing. You forgive not because you are told to, but because you understand there is no one outside the whole to hate. When this becomes clear, forgiveness is no longer something you try to do. It happens of itself. But how can you go on condemning a world that is not separate from you? How can you go on punishing yourself when the one who erred no longer exists? You see, all along you are stumbling toward awareness, just as everyone else is stumbling now. And the strange thing is, when you stop demanding perfection from yourself or from others, you begin to see the beauty of this clumsy dance. To forgive then is simply to let life be what it is, a process of falling and learning, breaking and mending. It doesn't erase the past, it releases its grip. And in that release you discover a freedom lighter than judgment, and a peace deeper than resentment. And so, forgive yourself. Forgive the world, not because it is noble, but because it is the only way life can keep flowing. If you're not following us, you will probably never hear my voice again. Join the movement, unlock your full potential.